Watching news at Prime, good to have you with us. All right, we start in Parliament, and this is where the former Independent Police Investigative Directorate head, Robert McBride, has concluded his evidence in chief. He outlined apparent plots against some of his colleagues. Newzroom Afrika's Zoleka Qodashe following those proceedings for us, and she joins us live to bring us quick highlights of what's been said today. Zoleka, good evening to you. Mr. McBride expected back tomorrow, but this will be the opportunity now for members of Parliament to put questions to him. Take us back to some of the standout points of what he has had to say today.
That's correct, Oli. Robert McBride, the former IPID head, will be back to field a series of questions from lawmakers tomorrow, who will continue with their quest to gain clarity into some of the submissions and testimony that he has delivered before the inquisitorial body today. So one of the main takeaways that have come out is when the chief evidence leader, Advocate Norman Arnser, thrust us back to 2010, around 2010, 2011. You will remember that that is the Zimbabwe rendition saga, in which the former Gauteng Hawks head, that is Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya, was one of the people that were implicated, together with Hawks head in the country, Anwar Dramat, in the illegal deportation of about 5 Zimbabwean nationals at the Beitbridge border. And so that matter, you'll remember, led to the suspension and removal of Shadrack Sibiya, who then approached the Labour Court seeking his reinstatement. Of course, around 2020, he was then reinstated, given the fact that the Labour Court had ruled in his favour after that particular judgment. But what was interesting in relation to that matter is that you'll remember that Robert McBride was appointed as the head of IPID in 2014. Shortly after his appointment, around 2015, he then was confronted with this Zimbabwe rendition matter. That is when he then conducted investigations and also drafted a report in which he exonerated both Dramat as well as Sibiya. And he says that he feels that there was collusion in order to ensure that Dramat was removed from that particular position, as well as the fact that he feels that Shadrack Sibiya formed part of collateral damage in that particular quest. Let's take a listen.
It's clear that there was connivance between the minister's office and the prosecuting authority, because one of the report that the minister used to kind of find fault with us was a January report, which obviously Mosing had given him, because Mosing had it from Cuba. So there was my own view is that the decision was to get rid of Dramat, and there's lots of speculations about that. But Sibiya fell in the middle. Sibiya just fell in the middle because someone had a bone to pick with him. And we were the ones who refused to recommend prosecution.
Now, Koli, you'll remember that he then was suspended because of that exoneration of those two parties, but also he then challenged that particular matter before the High Court after he was suspended by former Minister of Police, Nathi Nhleko. Of course, there was then an application for confirmation of that constitutional invalidity in terms of some provisions of the IPID Act, and it was the Constitutional Court, a unanimous Constitutional Court finding, judgment rather, that the certain provisions of the IPID Act were invalidated and set unconstitutional insofar as they gave the minister unfettered powers in relation to the discipline and removal of an IPID head. The judgment, or rather the suspension of Robert McBride, was later invalidated and also set aside. So that is an important matter that formed part of the testimony of Robert McBride today. But it was also the Pahlane task team that he essentially confirmed. You remember that those allegations from Cedric Ngabinde in relation to a Phahlane task team that sought to ensure that Khomotso Phahlane, the former acting National Police Commissioner, would not be given that particular position permanently because it was alleged that Paul O'Sullivan, the forensic investigator, only wanted Robert McBride to assume to that particular position, also forcing the president's hand, because you remember that in terms of Section 207, subsection 1 of the Constitution, it is only the president that can appoint a national police commissioner. And so that particular task team, it's alleged, was to force the president's hand in order to ensure that Khomotso Phahlane would not assume to that position permanently. But you remember that it was former police minister Fikile Mbalula that suspended Khomotso Phahlane in 2017. But what Robert McBride has then done before the inquisitorial body today is to confirm that there was indeed a Khomotso Phahlane task team, but it was not for the reasons set out by Cedric Gabinde and also by the reasons set out by Khomotso Phahlane when he appeared before the fact-finding body last week. Instead, he says that there were various corruption matters or investigations that were taking place against Khomotso Phahlane. Let's take a listen.
Ma'am, there were two main issues. The first one was a purchase of defective investigative equipment. So instead of specialized brushes to dust the fingerprints, it was like paint brushes. The paint brushes actually wipe off the fingerprint. So and also the chemical, something was wrong with the chemical. So there are a number of issues. A lot of that is contained in, I think, in the exhibits, I'm not sure. But, and then also that at the forensics lab where Phahlane was, and this is, the complaints are emanating, I think, from even before I arrived at IPID. So it involved exhibits going missing, like rhino horn, narcotics, illegal narcotics, going missing, and instead of, and some of those narcotics, according to the allegations, found their way onto the streets. And when they were on the streets, it was marked destroyed. That was more or less the complaint. So so the complaint involved first I think it's a Colonel Munsami, I'm not sure of the surname, and then pop crew members, and also Paul O'Sullivan had laid a complaint.
Now, Xoli, there's also the issue of Paul O'Sullivan, as is mentioned there by Robert McBride. And that particular relationship is also an important one because you remember that it's alleged that Khomotso Phahlane, the Phahlane task team, consisted of Robert McBride as well as Paul O'Sullivan, the forensic investigator. This is an important matter, of course, because you'll remember that Khomotso Phahlane last week told the inquisitorial body that when there were IPID officials that visited his home or his property, that Paul O'Sullivan formed part of that team. And so it is up to the inquisitorial body and lawmakers to really look at whether that is a satisfactory answer in relation to that particular matter. But you'll also remember that there's the issue of Paul O'Sullivan's attendance before the inquisitorial body. He was one of the people that were meant, or witnesses that were meant to appear before the fact-finding body next week. But he's now told Parliament and written to Parliament saying that he will be unable to appear physically because he is not in the country, and also that he has security concerns. But for more on this, I'm joined by the chairperson of the ad hoc committee, Soviet Lechanyane, just to speak about this particular matter in relation to Paul O'Sullivan and what mechanisms the ad hoc committee is pursuing to ensure that he actually does appear.
Good evening to you, Zoleka, and good evening to Xoli in the studio, and all viewers of Newzroom Afrika. I want to take this opportunity, because it's the first time we speak to you this year, to thank you for giving us this opportunity, but also to thank you in person for having been with us here from the first day when we started with our proceedings. You are still here today, the 20th of January in the new year. Thank you so much for the sterling work that we have seen you doing. We wake up in the morning, even before we arrive in the parliamentary precincts, we see you. We are informed by you on our televisions that this will be the issues that we'll be dealing with for that particular day. It is true that the name of Mr. Paul Sullivan has been mentioned many times by witnesses that have appeared before this committee, and one of the aspects in our terms of reference is to investigate the interference of members of the public in the work of the SAPS. And so the information that has been presented before the committee so far suggests that in one way or another there might have been interference, and it is important that the said witness must be given an opportunity to clarify those allegations so that the committee can be able to confirm whether indeed there was an interference on his part. And you would know that even from today's proceedings, you heard Mr. McBride confirm that the incident where IPID officials visited General Patlane's house, Sullivan was also there. So obviously tomorrow, members may want to know, because McBride was the superior at IPID, whether at that time when Mr. O'Sullivan went to the house of, or was one of the occupants in the vehicle that went to General Patlane's house, whether he was an employee of IPID or what is it that qualified his or justified his presence in that event. So we will obviously get explanations. Mr. O'Sullivan has been informed by our legal team that we will want him to appear before the committee. We must thank him because he has cooperated so far with the legal team. Consultations have been made and have been concluded. He indicated in his correspondences with us that he's outside the country and that he's making an application for a virtual appearance. And further than that, there are statements that he has also made, which members of this committee, who are also members of parliament, feel that he is casting aspersions on the committee and the institution of parliament. Amongst them are statements like saying that he used a phrase like a criminal parliament, because where he stands, he believes that there are other members of parliament who are aiding criminals to get him back to the country so that he can be murdered. So, but if those are concerns, the committee feels that he could have raised those matters in a polite way than to cast aspersions and to start labeling some members of parliament as criminals. And furthermore, he also says in the event he was going to appear before us, even if it's a virtual appearance, he will still not recognize certain members, those coming from the MKP, the EFF, and the Action SA. We don't do work here as political parties. We're an ad hoc committee of parliament. And we at all times trying to resist party affiliation, because we said that we do our work in the name of the people of the Republic and on behalf of the Parliament of the Republic, and we don't want us to be separated that way or identified as members of respective political parties. We want to be seen as a committee of parliament. But we also have a responsibility to protect the image and the integrity of Parliament and its processes than for us to be jettisoned the way Mr. O'Sullivan wants to do, or let me say chooses to do. So we will continue to engage with him and persuade him to come before the committee. And if he is not persuaded, we will obviously have a recourse in terms of law, which I think he also knows what the implications are in case he's not appearing before the committee. The committee has met twice since the beginning of this year. It has taken a decision on this matter to say if he doesn't appear before the committee physically, this is what should happen. But for courtesy reasons, we still have to communicate with him and persuade him. And in the event he's not persuaded, we will inform him about the decision that the committee has taken. Yeah.
Now, Chairperson, in terms of Section 56 of the Constitution, as well as Section 14, subsection 1A of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities Act, you have the power as the committee to summon Paul O'Sullivan to appear before the inquisitorial body. But he mentions that he has issues in relation to, he has security concerns, and also that he's out of the country. Now, your terms of reference as a committee does stress the importance of physical appearances, right? But it also says that virtual appearances may be accepted in exceptional circumstances. Now, it doesn't stipulate what those exceptional circumstances are. Is the fact that he has security concerns not an exceptional circumstance for the committee?
Look, there are South Africans who are in worse circumstances. Some of them have been in hiding for many years, but they have still agreed that their greatest wish is to come and appear physically before the committee from their places of hiding. And they have done that in a very humble way, without the use of invective. I mean, if we show you the letter that has been written by the honorable citizen, you will not wish that kind of a letter to be written to you or to be written in your name. So, but look, we can't go there. That's why where we stand, we say, look, we will talk to Mr. O'Sullivan. We will write to him and persuade him to come and appear before the committee. But what is important is that there is law in this country, and there are institutions, like you have read respective provisions in the Constitution, that are empowered by law to act in a particular way in the event they cannot find recourse on certain processes. So, like I said, let's talk to him and show him the implications of him not appearing before the committee, and also value the motivations or the reasons that he's advancing why he can't appear before the committee physically. But at the end of the day, there need to be a balance between those imperatives. Okay. There is nothing we undermine, there is nothing we take for granted. We are the leadership of this country if we are an institution of parliament, and everything that we do must be in the interest of the citizen. But the law of this country reigns supreme.
Thank you. That was Soviet Lechanyane, the chairperson of Parliament's ad hoc committee that's investigating these allegations of criminal infiltration and political interference in the criminal justice system. He stresses the importance of abiding by the law, and you'll remember, in terms of those particular provisions of the Constitution, that's Section 56, 56 rather, as well as Section 14, subsection 1A of the Constitution, they are compelled, or they have the power to actually compel and summon Paul O'Sullivan to appear before the inquisitorial body. So that is something that it looks like the inquisitorial body is pursuing ahead of his appearance that was scheduled to take place next week, Xoli.